All right, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Is Tao Sick Tonight, or is he just allergic to me? No, this is the Enough to Keep Going podcast here on the for the week of July 20th, 2025. I am your host tonight, DBQ Hams, and that man coughing at the start of the show is Tao Master 99. Tao, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I don't know where that came from. I'm not sick.
Okay.
I swear.
Okay. This is
Or
why we have
or allergic to you.
Yeah, that's, I think my family would say the same. So it's perfectly reasonable that I spread it to other people. So no problem at all. Glad to have you here. We got plenty to talk about tonight. And joining us, rounding out the cast, as always, manning the boards, is Game Logic. Game, how are you tonight?
Good. I'm good. Ready to go.
All
very,
right.
very light news week. Like
it does feel like, yeah.
For years we have said, "Oh, it's a light news week. Oh, it's a light," and we've always been wrong by the time we actually do the show. But this week, actually, I was actually pulling very tiny threads for news.
Yeah, I was combing through
struggling.
stuff. Yep. And it's it's the middle of summer in the Northern Hemisphere, so it makes sense that this is a slower news week. And actually, given that frequently our news is related to layoffs, other than the King AI and some of the drama around Crafton and Subnautica 2, I think our negative news for the week is relatively minor. So,
well, that's also because we made a conscious choice. There were layoffs there.
Yes.
The studio that did the Oblivion remaster shed like 300 or 400 people, but yeah.
Yes, that is true as well. Yeah, and that was a global studio that grabbed people from across multiple countries as well. So, all right. Well, instead of talking about our news, what we'll do, as we always do here on the Enough to Keep Going podcast, is we talk about some of the big gaming experiences for our week, and then we'll segue into the news and wrap it up with what else has been on our playlist over the course of the week. And Tao, I'm going to start with you and what appears to be kind of the big release for this week. And all I have to say is banana.
Yes, so I picked up Donkey Kong Bananza this past weekend. Been playing it. I probably played maybe an hour and a half to maybe close to 2 hours now.
Okay,
still in the.
so tell me where you are, because you could spend an hour just kind of collecting coins in the first area if you wanted to.
Yeah, I'm still in the first. Well, not the first area, but the first level, I guess. Like kind of that mine section you kind of start off in. So I'm still there. I haven't moved on to anything past that yet. Because when I first started in the very first, where you first start off the game, I was just breaking the heck out of those rocks, like in just that little area you start off in. Like just kind of get used to it, and you kind of have just a regular punch forward, punch down, punch up. So just kind of figure out what button was what. So just kind of doing that and getting all the, I guess, coins, gold. I mean, there's coins too. I guess you collect.
Yeah, you're getting banana coins, which are used. You have multiple currencies in this game. You get banana coins, which are, you can purchase costumes or power-ups with it. You get fossils, which you can collect costumes, and fossils are usually what you use for your different costumes. And then you have coins themselves, and also then bananas, which are related to your skill points.
Yeah. So I just kind of, I was doing that in that first little section, and then eventually, finally, like after 15, 20 minutes, I kind of progressed past that part and was kind of starting to get into the world and at least the first main area, and getting into the story, I guess. Not really sure what's going on.
I mean, it's a relatively light story.
Yeah.
You could glean the story from the Nintendo Direct and some of the trailers along, the idea of these apes who are trying to get to the planet's core, and you are trying to stop them. You're also trying to get to the core yourself because it can open up, it can grant wishes. And so DK is trying to get there along with the companion, who starts off as a rock, and then
I got him already, or her.
Yep. Not really spoilers, because it shows up in the direct of turns into Pauline after kind of the completion of the first world area. So you're in kind of the mine area, still kind of darker rocks. You're not in the kind of island area of the first kind of bigger open world yet.
Correct. Right. Yeah. Still in that little mine-ish area. Yeah. It's opened up a little bit. Like obviously, there's bigger caverns I can go into now and stuff like that. But yeah, I haven't got. I think I might be pretty close to finishing that area. I guess you can call it tutorial area. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
also
definitely one of those where it seems like you could spend a lot of time trying to collect coins, destroying environments, and kind of terraforming things. It to me, it's my favorite part of Minecraft is just digging and destroying, and not necessarily crafting. And the how have you found the camera? Like as you're digging in and getting into like a tunnel, that camera kind of you get kind of you basically see where you are, but everything else around you kind of goes transparent. So
yeah, it kind of goes straight. Yeah. Yeah, it's a little weird sometimes. Like, especially if you're near, like, I guess the border of the level or like the kind of the stopping point. Because I can't see you. I can't really tell sometimes where I have to go at that point because everything is kind of just clear. But I can still break rocks, obviously, because I'm punching and I can hear it and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a little that's a little weird sometimes. You can't even if you kind of twist the camera around, then the rocks appear, but it blocks everything, so you can't see. So that can get a little annoying, but that's for me, that's a minor inconvenience for me.
yeah, I've had very little, like I've definitely had to babysit the camera occasionally underground in order to kind of line something up. But for a regular 3D platformer, it seems to handle the camera pretty well.
Yeah,
It gives you the traditional kind of right stick camera rotation aspect.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And then I've gotten the little kind of like what is it like the hand slap or hand stomp that you can do that kind of pings out like kind of your area too. So I was doing a lot of that because trying to see if I could find any more bananas in that kind of like beginning area. But so that's kind of cool. I hadn't really seen any issues, slow down or anything like frame rate stuff that people were talking about. I think we talked about that last week. Uh, but I'm not really. I'm still like I said, still in that beginning area. So I don't know if you've seen anything like that or how far you've gone.
I've noticed a little bit in some of the levels where you've got a lot of destruction, but it doesn't seem. And I think Digital Foundry kind of plays this out as well. Is that it seems to drop down to. I think Digital Foundry had it dropping down to 30 frames at one point. Switch Up had it dropping to about 40. So I haven't really noticed it that much, and it hasn't really affected gameplay because definitely they kind of hide it at times because it almost goes into a slow mo when you're doing certain things that are really destructive. So it kind of masks it for me. In terms of navigation and kind of fluid movement around the world, definitely has not created any issues in terms of performance. I've been playing both, mainly on handheld. I've played a little bit and watched a little bit on docked. How have you been playing it?
So far just handheld. I haven't docked it yet. Haven't had a chance to. Uh, Once I'm in my docking area, I've been playing Rematch a lot. So I'll talk about that
Sure.
later. But yeah, but I only handheld so far, and like I said, it's been fine. I haven't seen any issues with it.
Yeah, it looks really good.
Yeah, it looks really good.
That after the area that you're in, you get into kind of an island area, which we've also seen in the direct and the trailers. The water effects look pretty good. You get some glimmer off of Donkey Kong as a character in terms of its Donkey Kong's fur. It is as you dig around, you can find treasure chests that give you fossil maps, and those kind of get marked on your map. And so you can kind of set a pin for them, and it shows up on your, in your world. And it is, I've spent probably a couple hours at this point, obviously a little bit more than you, and have gotten through the first kind of big open world into the second open world. There's so much to do, and it feels really natural and fluid. I was talking with my son about this, I'm in level 2, he's in level 11 at this point. and has unlocked, they showed transformations, right? We've seen this through the Nintendo Direct, that you can turn into like a big ape that has a strong punch, or an ostrich that can fly, and a zebra that can run fast. There are additional transformations that were not shown. They happen later on. It took my son until, well, you meet Diddy and Dixie, which we saw in the Direct. He first met them in World 11. So it definitely, there's a good amount of content here to go through. There's definitely some secrets as you kind of navigate around, things to unlock, and also just a joy. I'm finding a real joy in the exploration of it. And I think, you're kind of feeling it where you are, but as soon as you get into this next world, Tao, it really starts to open up and gives you a lot of freedom to hunt down other things. It also feels a whole lot more vast than Mario Odyssey, where Odyssey definitely had, it wasn't as tightly compact and confined as Galaxy in terms of dropping you into a self-contained world. But Odyssey definitely felt like you were in this world, but it was still kind of bounded. And here, there's definitely a much broader scope to it that is reflective of a new console. It definitely feels like, we had the news story this week of this is originally in development for the Switch 1, and some of the scenes in terms of what screenshots looked like on the Switch 1 versus Switch 2. And it really feels like it takes advantage of not only the faster memory times and loading times, but also the enhanced graphics power to create a much broader landscape and world to explore.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to the graphics a little bit, I just, kind of amazed when I'm playing the game and just kind of look at Donkey Kong just, by himself. Like he has like the fur that's like kind of, flowing, and, you see it like moving around. It's not just like a flat like skin on him like you don't see him in other games. And just the world itself is, obviously the first level, but still pretty nice. Like if he jumps in the water and comes back out, he's wet. Obviously he dries off pretty quick, but just kind of those little details that are kind of nice. And then with the speaking of Odyssey, because I had mentioned that last week, I had just played it last week and then jump into this one. Yeah, you kind of see like an Odyssey, you're just kind of like, I don't want to say on a track, but a lot of them kind of seem that way. Like, you're just going to go to point A to point B for the most part. There's some like kind of bigger areas, but for the most part, it's like it's a Mario level. You're kind of going just from one side to another of the stage. So, but yeah, even just in this confined uh, place I'm in right now, it still seems a little bit more open. You can break the world in that first area, but obviously you hit stones that you can't. You're not strong enough, I guess, or whatever to break yet, or just can't at all because it's the boundary of the game. But yeah, I'm having a lot of fun so far with it.
That's great. Yeah, I think, and Donkey Kong's climbing ability really adds a lot to the traversal between climbing and landscape destruction. Like you can make your way up most cliffs and ledges. There's certain surfaces that you can't climb, you slide down, but it really opens it up in terms of exploration. And it also continues on some of the classic kind of Donkey Kong Country aspects of, doing a roll off a cliff and then making a jump and being able to get some additional distance. There's some things that are similar to the Cappy movements in Odyssey, where you can have a rock and ride it, jump off a cliff, and then throw it down to get an additional jump off of it, just like you would with throwing Cappy out, landing on Cappy, and taking a second jump. There's it is very approachable, but it also has there's a skill ceiling there that rewards your kind of continued mastery as well. So that is Donkey Kong Bonanza on the Switch 2. A lot of game there, and it's been fun for me playing it. I really enjoyed Odyssey. I enjoyed Astrobot last year. A 3D platformer is very enjoyable. It's also been fun as a parent to last night I found myself getting stuck somewhere. Like, I know I should be able to do this. How do I get past this? And having to ask my son, like, you just punch it, Dad. This is why you don't have to, like, so it's been
Making too
fun to
much
have this,
stuff.
that role reversal in there as well.
The student has become the master.
I was just
That's
about
right.
to say that.
Very much feels like that. Yes. Yep.
So one thing I wanted to ask, so in Super Mario Odyssey, you kind of went through this recursive loop where you go to a world, maybe you don't 100% it, then you are trying to get another world open, and so you often come back to a world that you didn't 100% just to kind of pick away at it, chip away at it, while you're trying to get another world unlocked or find another world. Is it like that in DK Bonanza? Like, do those levels have a healthy amount of replayability, and are they procedural at all, or is everything just kind of laid out in a pattern and it's up to you to go like find every nook and cranny?
So I'll say they're not procedural. They are designed and crafted. The destruction that you do resets when you go between worlds. So if you come back to a world, what your destruction was resets. Certainly in the first, big open world with multiple levels that I was in, I could have advanced and gone to another. You kind of make your way down levels. I could have gone down to another level, and actually did, and then came back up. There's a fast travel system through an EO network. Basically, just a couple spots on the map that can fast travel you around and take you between layers, in addition to taking you between spots on the world itself. So there is that ability, and some of the upgrade skills, as Tao was talking about, that ability to kind of slap your hands down and almost like a sonar ping in Arkham Asylum, right, where you can see what else is there. You have that ability, and it can be upgraded, so the distance increases. So you definitely could come back to levels to find banana coins or fossils, or you can continue to kind of make your way through. I think I found most of the things before I advanced. At least my map was relatively cleared off, but certainly there is the possibility. I almost would want to check against a guide to know how many bananas, or it's the equivalent in Odyssey. You were collecting moons, right? And you would collect moons in different, multiple moons in a world, and bananas fill that same type of role here. So having a sense of how many are possible to get, and knowing that you can always come back either when you have additional skills that can finally break through a type of rock formation, or just being able to come back and kind of, if you want to make your way through the story and come back to do more exploration, is definitely possible.
So that brings me to another. So you guys have mentioned there is some type of progression system, or at least there are like different moves or whatever that are unlockables. And I guess because they are at times assisting you with the traversal, you guys haven't come across any now that are like what I often refer to as hollow progressions, or hollow upgrades, where you unlock something but it doesn't feel particularly impactful.
Tao, have you unlocked many skill points at this point? Maybe one or two, depending on where you're at.
I have not yet. I mean, I've been collecting the coins to do that, but I haven't come to that part where it actually lets me. I'm assuming they like kind of tell you like, hey, you can upgrade now, because I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, every 5 bananas, like the big bananas that you break, can
I've only
then
got like 2 or
give
3
you
of
a
those
skill
so far.
point.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, it feels like, and in a traditional kind of skill tree system, like your initial skill, your level 1 costs 1 skill point, level 2 costs 2, so there are, it definitely, like, it recommends like where you would spend your skill points, but you have the flexibility of spending them on other things. So, I definitely found myself spending it on something that made sense the way I was playing it, which then meant that I didn't power up my punch as quickly. And so when I got to the spot that I was asking my son about, and he said, "Oh, you just punched through it," and he said, "Yeah, if you had upgraded this, it would go a whole lot faster." So there is that kind of flexibility in there. And then for each of your transformations, the different animal transformations, they have their own kind of limited skill tree as well. And so there are, it's I enjoy the upgrade ability because it does feel like the progressions are worthwhile. Where, in a Mario game, basically the skill set that you have carries with you throughout most of the game in a 3D Mario. Mario Wonder was a little different because each of those Wonder Stars gave you different types of power ups, but this definitely feels like it's hitting on that you're getting stronger as you're going, which is always, as a numbers person, as we'll talk about in later in the show about Destiny and Division 2, like numbers go up, character gets powerful is always a nice feeling. And so Donkey Kong Bonanza kind of captures that a little bit without necessarily going overboard in really forcing you down like a significant RPG Diablo-esque type of skill tree. Tao, anything else before we move on?
Nope, that was it for me.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a really enjoyable game. There's a lot to it. I can see where, the conversation around if this was out at launch, it would have been a system seller. I can also see Nintendo's reasoning of giving Mario Kart its own space and then Donkey Kong its own space as well. But yeah, it's really enjoyable. So if you enjoy 3D platformers, right? Like I think that is always kind of the context there. All right. Well, let's head into our news stories. As we said, this was a relatively slow news week, or at least what we grabbed out of it. I think one of the stories that I didn't put in here was Japan's Bit Summit and the Patapon, the Ratatan game winning game of the show. And really, I just Bit Summit is organized. It's around the indie scene in Japan, and organized and founded by James Milkey, who works with the Luminous Tetris Effects developer, but was originally part of the staff for EGM. And so as we think about the state of games media, it's always fun to see a name pop up that I haven't necessarily, thought of in 2 decades or so with somebody like James Milkey. So we'll go from the games media side into games technology. And Game Logic, you have our first one around Intel.
Yep. This news story over on video cards with a Z.com. Nova Lake AX appears, a high-end APU design from Intel. And the article reads, it has been a while since JKIN reported on changes in Intel CPU roadmaps. Perhaps it is a troubling time in Intel where thousands of people are being laid off and projects are being canceled. So whatever was listed on a roadmap just a few months ago may not necessarily see the light of day. However, there is one exception, Nova Lake AX. This code name is not commonly known and has not been heard before. Apparently, the rumor is that the AX variants, which were never used for any Intel Core architecture, might represent a new large APU design intended to counter the growing interest in AMD's Strix Halo platform. Of course, this was just speculation, but we asked JKIN directly whether this is indeed a Halo competitor, and this was confirmed. And so at the top of the article, it reads, Intel is finally taking AMD Strix Halo seriously. So it'll be interesting. This is really, I guess this would be primarily a laptop part. AMD's Strix Point is a dual purpose APU that is intended for both laptop and handheld. And Intel isn't really one that is particularly known for APUs. Typically, they go with they do integrated graphics, which is kind of the same thing as an APU. But generally, when Intel does integrated graphics, they're pretty anemic and they're like boilerplate. The bare minimum GPU that you need to go along with a business laptop or something like that. Not really intended for gaming. The notion that they are doing an APU suggests a slightly more serious take in a gaming-centric approach to APUs. And the main reason why I grabbed this is because the notion of Intel doing an APU may point to them wanting to do something in the handheld space, which is where I think there is a lot of interest today. There is interest in the laptop space, but so yeah, this will be interesting just to kind of see where they take it. Intel, the Intel Core Ultra line, which I want to say what's in the MSI Claw 8 is, I think, a Meteor Lake CPU. It's not an Arrow Lake or Arrow. Yeah, it's not an Arrow Lake CPU. It's Meteor Lake, which is the handheld variant of maybe the Arrow Lake architecture. But point being is, like I said, this may be an indicator if they do this AX processor, this APU approach may indicate that they want to do something in the handheld space. MSI was using the Core Ultra chips in the MSI Claw, and then they went away from them. And so even though that variant of the MSI Claw is the most powerful, if I'm not mistaken, they did one variant with either an AMD APU or a lower powered Intel CPU, and then they did kind of an Uber one, which is a very powerful. Actually, it's the most powerful handheld right now until we see the Zen 2 or the Z2 Extreme chip show up later this year. But this Nova Lake AX processor may mean that Intel is going to put something on offer for integrator vendors to make an Intel chip that is more attractive to being used in handhelds, instead of just taking the loss from MSI, kind of kicking them out of the crib, and choosing to stay out of the game, which is interesting because obviously Intel right now is hyper focused on kind of hunkering down, and really needs to focus on their biggest and best bets. And so this, to me, kind of caught me off guard. It seems like something unusual and out of the norm that Intel would do right now, given the kind of adversity that they're under. But I think the key thing is anything that makes the handheld space kind of light up, I think is exciting and interesting. Again, I continue to keep my eye out for the NVIDIA MediaTek collaboration to see if that delivers handheld APUs. I know NVIDIA has said that they want to get into the space to do something to support Windows on ARM. And so I think that would be interesting. And then to see if Qualcomm makes a chip that is tailored towards handheld gaming PCs could get super interesting as well.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable to see that handheld PC space as a growth area, and having Intel try to be competitive in that space, develop things for it, certainly makes sense in terms of not ceding market share in the same way. So good pull here. All right. So our next news story. This week we heard from Ubisoft and Netflix that Assassin's Creed, the series, was moving forward, but we also got some other news from Netflix and their game division. This is a Game Logic. This is one you pulled from GameSpot, as you've got it up here on the screen.
Yeah, Netflix to ramp up investment in gaming as company addresses further monetization possibilities, by Eddie Makuch. Netflix plans to ramp up its investment in gaming after the company previously pulled back from its grand ambitions in the AAA space and shut down a studio from Halo veteran Joe Staten. As part of Netflix's latest earnings briefing, co-CEO, president, and director Greg Peters commented on Netflix's vision for gaming, saying Netflix's investment thus far has been relatively small in comparison to the money it puts into film, TV, and live sports gaming. The opportunity to grow is significant, he said. So the reason this article caught my eye is because of the whiplash, right? Because as it mentions in the opening, we just are coming off of the announcement that they had shut down the studio that was being headed by Joe Staten. And not too long ago was that we were hearing that Joe Staten was leaving 343 Studios and Microsoft and Xbox to go to Netflix Gaming. So, in an age where we're constantly being whiplashed around by gaming companies doing something different than the last thing that they said, I thought this was particularly interesting. I haven't followed, and because this had gone on, I haven't followed what's been going on with Netflix gaming as much very closely because I was starting to hear shades of Google Stadia. But apparently they licensed Grand Theft Auto. I think they have Grand Theft Auto 5 maybe on the Netflix service.
They've got the trilogy, I believe. The
Okay.
remastered trilogy. Yep.
So they went out and licensed that content, which is interesting. And they've continued to push games that are collateral with their streaming services. The Squid Game, Unleashed game, meanwhile, received new content themed around the recently released season 3. So I don't know, maybe that this is much of a matter of Netflix kind of backing out of the game initiative as far as kind of tightening things up. And I know one of the things that that the executive mentions in this article, I think it was Greg Peters, indicates that the intention here is not to throw like hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars right at gaming, and just kind of take kind of the PlayStation live service approach, right, and do like 12 games and do this huge investment. It's to do things very slowly. And what he talks about particularly is, because of both their shareholders and also their subscribers, they don't want to make a huge go at games that may not deliver value to their subscriber base. As a Netflix subscriber, I think I like the sound of that, because one of the things I'm concerned about is I don't want to see my Netflix bill go up because Netflix is delivering games that I have and I have zero interest, right, in that content. And I don't want to be penalized, right, so that what I pay, subsidizes what's going to games. Obviously, I would love to see that separated. It would be better to me if, games were like a $5 bolt-on that you didn't have to subscribe to. But I thought this whole thing was very interesting, that that they are gonna slowly kind of crank open that faucet just a little. How they're gonna go about monetization, I don't exactly know. I know there was another executive in an interview, I think on the Game Business Show with Chris String, who was talking about how they children, when they get into a series like a Peppa Pig or something, it's like they want everything associated like with that IP, right? They want to watch the show, they want to play the game, they want to get like the outfits, they want to get the toys, like all that stuff. So there was an eye given to looking in that direction, and they did something like that with one of their cartoons or whatever. So right now they don't have ads or microtransactions, but I would think that eventually, we'll see things like that. So very interesting that they're not getting out of the game, as you may have been led to believe by the closing of Staten's studio.
Yeah, I think, one of the benefits of Netflix games has been that, similar to Apple Arcade, like you're not getting things that are microtransactions, that it is something that you could give to a younger child and not fear charges on your phone or other things like that. And speaking of Peppa Pig is the most recently released game on Netflix games right now. But Netflix games also, it does have some other big names. It has Civilization 6. It's got a Street Fighter 4 edition on here. You've got, I played the Arranger last year, which was that kind of puzzle game where you were sliding blocks around. Dead Cells is on here. But it also has a number of things related to different Netflix series. But it also has lost a number of games that the licensing has run out in the last month. One of the news stories that I saw, and kind of checking on my Netflix app as well, is that the license for some of the games that it previously had, some of the third party or other developer games that they had licensed, that license had run out, and those things were leaving the service as well. And so, given what we have and have not seen in terms of Netflix game development, it doesn't surprise me that they're looking at how they could make this a revenue stream, or at least self-sustainable to some degree, that it certainly has not been up to this point.
I also thought a thing that was super interesting was when they talk about delivering this content via streaming. they said that they are specifically not delivering it to PlayStation and Xbox. So if you're using the Netflix app from one of those two devices, you will not see that gaming content. I thought that was super interesting because positive or negative, depending on how you look at it, I wind up being in a lot of arguments over the pros and cons of exclusives. I am particularly politically aligned against the agenda-based journalism that only cites the negatives associated with exclusives and doesn't talk about the pros at all. And so I thought that was very interesting. And in a one of the ideological contentions I get in is this effort to say, well, the discussion of exclusives is isolated to exclusives on hardware. You can't talk about video streaming services, which absolutely do exclusives. That's the entire reason that they have their own studios, is to get you to subscribe to their service and not others. But there's this effort to say, well, Netflix doesn't tell you you can only stream it on LG TV, so therefore it's not the same thing. And I'm like, okay, it's not the same thing at a very granular delivery mechanism, right? But the semantic of an exclusive is absolutely the same thing. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Tao, I wanted to ask you, because you do a lot of cloud streaming, have you partaken of the Netflix games at all?
No, actually, I didn't even realize they had been doing that. I was just actually looking through the article when you guys were talking. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then you mentioned it. And I actually clicked on the link here, and it kind of takes you to the Netflix page where they're talking about it. I was like, I had no idea you could even do that. Now, I'm assuming when they're talking about the stream, like I have a smart TV, but I just use a Roku anyways. So I'm wondering if it's probably not possible through the Roku, but probably through just my TV itself. I'm thinking.
I think you probably can through Roku. Like I use a Kindle Fire Stick, and I see games that are not on my mobile app when I'm on the Netflix app on TV. Okay. And so, I would guess that Roku, as being kind of a more open platform that doesn't necessarily is attached to, if Amazon is doing it, I would guess that Roku is, because Roku is usually more open than Amazon has been.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out. They kind of had a list of games too. It was like 9, I think, or 10 games here on the site, on the Netflix site. So I'll have to look at it and see if I'm able to do that. And it'll be interesting, yeah, because I will kind of test out the streaming aspect of different services. So kind of interesting that they're starting to do this, and really interesting that I never heard of this before. So I don't know if I just never pay attention, or I don't know, just flew under my radar or something. So yeah, definitely try it out.
All right, let's move on to our final story. This week we had Steam was in the news for a couple different reasons. One of the stories that popped across my radar was related to a recent report that showed that 7% of Steam games now use generative AI, and the other Steam news here is related to questionable content as well. And Game Logic, you've just pulled up the Valve around the news story here from IGN, correct?
I wouldn't be surprised that there is a Venn diagram with a significant amount of overlap between generative AI and this topic.
Yes, would not surprise me at all.
Valve pulls adult-only games from Steam as it tightens rules to appease payment partners. This news story over on IGN by Vicky Blake, who, by the way, is she the only journalist working in gaming right now? I see her writing at VG247, at VGC, at GameIndustry.biz, at Eurogamer. It's like they laid off all the gaming journalists, and now it's just Vicky Blake and Rebecca Valentine, apparently, left.
Yeah, I was going to say Reb is still doing her stuff as well. But yeah, I think it's also the fact that IGN, I mean, there's been so much consolidation that so many of these are partners of partners, and you see more of that cross-pollination to some degree too.
Yep. Valve is tightening its guidelines around adult-only content to satisfy rules set by Steam's payment processing partners, with dozens of sexually explicit games removed from the platform throughout the week. As spotted by GameSpark and shared by Automaton, Steam DB logs show a flurry of activity behind the scenes as Steam updated its rules and guidelines policy, making it clear that publishing certain kinds of adult-only content could violate them. There's a clause 15 of the policy states that content that may violate the rules and standards set forth by Steam's payment processors and related card networks in banks or internet network providers shouldn't be posted on Steam. So this is super interesting to me because, of course, I want to say somewhere in the 2000 teens, maybe 16, 17, or 18. I think 16 maybe. Steam. So we've been here before, right? There was a game that came through, and Steam put the kibosh on it. And this was really at the height of kind of the wailing and gnashing of teeth of the Apple Store, and the way that they kind of, in a very puritanical approach, state what content can be on the App Store or not. Steam kind of got itself in a bit of hot water because it kind of took the same approach for one particular game. I can't remember what it is. The Steam community is obviously probably very different from the Apple iPhone App Store community, and there was a huge outcry. And Steam kind of went back and forth over a course of like 2 weeks, kind of doing the same thing that I mentioned earlier in the show. There was this big whiplash effect. And at the end of the day, Steam said, look, we're not going to be in the business of telling gamers what games they should play or telling publishers what games they should publish. And so they took this huge step backward and said, basically, because they had an approval process that was kind of similar to the App Store, maybe not as stringent, but they had an approval process, and they entirely backed off of that notion of governance and said, you can now publish whatever you want to publish on Steam. And then if there's an issue, we'll address it after the fact, right? Because somebody has complained or there's a big outcry. Tons of knock-on effects with this. Number one, primarily being the thing that we've talked about on the show a great deal, which is that there are now 19,000 games that are published on Steam each year. And one of the reasons is because it's so easy, because there's no impediment to publishing. And that number has been on the rise. The first year Steam came off the blocks of governance, it went to 10,000, and then it went to 13,000, and then 15,000, and now we're at 19,000 games. And the other side effect was the notion of discoverability on the front page of Steam became of zero value. Like, there's 0 point in going to the front page of Steam and seeking for discoverability. And so what they had to do is they had to layer in this kind of Netflix-like attenuation of your likes and your preferences based on what you've played in order to get you a presentation queue so that you can go through that. Because, like I said, if you just come to the front page of Steam, it's absolutely of zero value. And so all those things didn't exist before that great cataclysm at Steam. Now here we are again. And so the payment processors have kicked up a bee's nest because of charges for content, I guess, that they're seeing on their credit cards and whatnot, and because of policies that they have in place, and not wanting to have to make an exception, for Steam. And so they have gone to Steam and registered this grievance, and Steam has taken action. What's interesting as well, there's a socio-cultural part of this, to where I've said constantly the down with DEI crowd, and the, hey, we need all of our characters, we need all female characters to look attractive and appealing. So this whole
they lean to look like 2006 Dead or Alive, is what you're saying.
Yes, yeah. And then there's a conflict going on social media now about like Western design versus Eastern design, and that the Asian countries are still making beautiful looking female characters, and meanwhile in the West there's other value systems right at play in the character designs that are coming out, all of which is complete foolishness. But what I've said as pushback to the people who complain about those things, about characters not looking attractive, is I've always said, well, there's tons of adult only hentai games right on Steam. You could become a PC gamer and just go play those, right? Stop acting like you're no longer getting what it is that you want because there's a place that serves that content. Now there won't be as much of that content, or at least it will have an inflection point, or it'll be slightly different. So I thought this was interesting. I personally feel this is a thing that won't have, for the vast majority of the mainstream market, or the mainstream market that we acknowledge, this is the type of thing that won't have a lot of surface impact. But I feel like the metrics that we like don't look at and the metrics that aren't in front of your face and like the things that people don't talk about. Because what people don't talk about is that tons of this content sells right on Steam, and there's a significant consumer base for this type of content, but because it's unsavory, we don't talk about it a lot, right? Not we on the show, but like the industry, right? Doesn't talk, like Matt Piscatella doesn't like report these numbers in his NPD countdown, right? So it'd be interesting to see what impact this has and whether or not it causes the ground to shift a great deal in the market. I don't know. Any comments or thoughts?
No, Nate, thanks for joining us. Yeah, Nate has posted here, seen plenty of this in the top Steam charts. I think that that kind of push-pull will be interesting to see kind of Steam make this change as quickly, or at least it seems relatively quickly. Makes me wonder, like, is the volume not high enough that they need to dig in because they're losing a significant amount of revenue? But then to know that there's a whole lot of volume, but how much of that makes its way to the top of the charts? It really becomes, I think it'll be interesting to see what the ramifications and kind of ripple effects are here.
So one of the things to consider is, in the US, this may not be as much of an issue, but the thing you have to think about is, you have countries like China that will, police, right, the type of content that people consume, and may have monitoring set up on payment systems. You have things like Islamic countries, right, where there may be barriers, right, to procuring this type of content in other places. And I'm not saying that those things are necessarily a certainty. I'm just saying that those are some, for examples of the types of economic policies that can be in place in a given regime or in a given country or within a given culture that could, that could cause, like, China. And I don't know that PayPal operates in China. I'm just saying this as a for instance. China, obviously, when tech companies and financial companies are in China, obviously they do it like as a pass through with an actual Chinese company, because you can't be a Western company operating in China. But at any rate, China says this is our policy, right? And thou shalt conform to it. And so if you're Facebook or you're Google, and you're operating in China, your terms of service, your rules, your implementations may be altered because the Chinese government tells you to. And so, here this Twitter post that's showing in this article is saying, apparently PayPal, right, locked things down, and that could be PayPal was told to do so, right, by a given political regime. So interesting, and a thing to just kind of see how it impacts the market. It would be nice if I would get that stuff kind of out of my windshield, right, when I go on to Steam. That would be a plus for me. But yeah, we'll just see how it goes.
Yeah. Good pull, good analysis. So any other thoughts here, gentlemen, before we move on to our third segment? All right. Well, let's round the corner into our rundown and our playlist in terms of what else has been coming across our controllers and consoles and keyboards over the course of this week. And since I've got the mic, I'm going to start. Last week, I made the joke that Destiny's expansion, Edge of Fate, came out or was coming out this week, and how much of a non-issue it has been for us as the three of us, who one of our earliest topics on, back when we were 2 generations ago of podcasts, was around Destiny. But I broke down. I bought in. I purchased Edge of Fate, and I got it at a little bit of a discount. Thank you, CD Keys. But ended up getting it, and I'm gonna say that for someone like me that has not been heavily into Destiny for the last 2 years at this point, Lightfall and the final shape I own them both. I have finished neither campaign. Just my fire team kind of fell away, and there wasn't the momentum to kind of keep going. So even the final shape, which I was excited about from a narrative standpoint, definitely it just so I have not been have not even fired up Destiny probably since the final shape came out a little over a year ago. And so if you've been looking online at all around the Edge of Fate, the general consensus seems to be the story is really interesting, has some big kind of twists and reveals, but the kind of treadmill aspect doesn't feel as rewarding. And I totally, I could see that if you've been playing this on a regular basis. It is a big reset of your power levels. Like it's a complete, my power level is 10. You are totally kind of restarting everything in terms of in this new paradigm with this next kind of stage in Destiny, right? We finished off the Light and Darkness saga, and now we're into this is supposed to be kind of what comes next. And it's a smaller team at Bungie because we know that we've had layoffs, and some of the team has been working on Marathon. And so the scope of what this is smaller already. That the area that you're in, Kepler, the planet that you are that this expansion is centered around, you don't have a sparrow. You're not transversing with your little hover bike. That's not possible. It's a much more smaller scoped and more self-contained. They do add a little bit of a new mechanic in here, which is basically a Metroid, the morph ball that you are in you're rolling up as a spark ball and moving around. Yeah, I think that face game logic is like, yeah, so somebody was somebody liked Metroid Prime. I don't know that it definitely, if it adds a whole lot, it's kind of fun. It's a different mechanic. But in some ways it changes the scope of the area. It's much more confined. It feels a little more, I'm only a couple missions in at this point in the story. It definitely feels a little more linear in those aspects. Seems like one of the big changes that they made was what they called the portal, where you were moving away from what has existed for a decade of the kind of world map, where you're moving a cursor around and selecting a planet and then locations on the planet. That the portal was supposed to be an easy to access, kind of accessible on ramp for somebody who wanted to jump into single player content, fire teams, crucible, multiplayer aspects. And it does that. It's organized by like solo missions, which rotate around and give you different rewards. You've got fire team missions. You've got competitive. So there are those pieces, and I thought it was totally going to replace the world map. World map's still there. It's just in a different layer. It's not your if you're used to using the world map to move your way around, all those other layers below Destiny that were part of the cruff that was hard to navigate in terms of where to go and layers upon layers of quest missions, those things are still there. It's just it's not put out in front of you as the first thing to experience. That what it's giving you is a little more filtered in terms of trying to direct you places. Game logic.
So we don't usually do a lot of Q&A during segment 3, but we got some extra time tonight since news was so anemic. So I need to ask why. And like, and I was a Destiny stan. Like I have had this romanticism about like going back to the final shape. I think we peaked at the Witch Queen, which was the last campaign that I played all the way through. I think I have Lakefall, but I don't think I even finished that. But so we have all
Yeah, we're in a similar spot
become
then. Yeah.
lapsed Destiny players, right? I think, well, Tao, Tao, I don't remember if you were ever like a big Destiny player, but you played a little bit, right?
The first one I did. The second one I
Okay.
was a little bit when it first came out. But I
Okay.
think we might have even played all together at one point too. I believe,
Yeah.
or at least
And
me
then,
and you.
and then Swiss definitely was a big Destiny. You know, we pulled Swiss across the Great Divide. So, but how do I want to term this?
What brought me back?
You've seen the decay and you've seen the fall, and yet you return even after buying the final shape. So was it like a nostalgia purchase? Like you were in love with the idea of coming back more so than?
Okay, so before I answer, in part of my answer to your question is the gunplay is still just so good. I mean, right? Like, I think that is like, no matter what criticism I want to level at or what fans may level at the game in terms of its structure, the moment to moment gunplay is still just satisfying. And right, like that one, it brings back that emotional attachment, but two, it's just really satisfying. And so I think there was that piece for me. And this is why to answer your question, the reason I frame this from the beginning as I am somebody who is a lapsed player is that this reset feels perfectly fine to me. Like, because I had, like, when I came back to the final shape, I like, yeah, it bumped me up, but all my gear was kind of like, oh, what do I do now? And I have to, my just back on the same treadmill. And, because it was 10 years of, or at least it was since 2017 with Destiny 2, it was 7 years of this progression. Like, I at one point knew what I was supposed to be doing, but had fallen away from it long enough that I totally kind of forgot. And without going deep into Reddit threads or Paul Tassi on Forbes to figure out what all was going on, it was easy for me to bounce off the final shape without a fire team to keep me going, and without necessarily feeling like, oh yeah, I understand this new upgrade system or what I'm supposed to imbue for these armor sets. And yes, there's definitely some of that kind of multi-layer armor stuff that's going on here. But for me, it's a blue engram, and the blue engram is higher than what my current stuff is, right? Like, it almost, the reset is refreshing, is that like it allows me to jump back in and say, I don't have to remember everything. I can start back from where it is right now. And so I think, so part of it was nostalgia, but part of it was also really curiosity. And I think I jumped onto it because of that curiosity the most of, can I come back? Is it something that I'm interested in coming back to? And do I get lost in the shuffle as I have before if I'm not keeping up with it? And so I think it was in part that it came out a few days before Donkey Kong, and I was like, yeah, I definitely want to try like this experiment. And I'm looking at it as an experiment in terms of why to come back. And I think the narrative aspects, I haven't seen any spoilers yet. I just know that there's a number of twists at the end that people have been pretty serious about trying to stay spoiler free over, which makes me interested. And knowing that it's not a super long campaign, I feel like, yeah, I could give that a try. So yes, I think it was a curiosity to see if it could pull me back in. And also, I mean, I think this is a challenge for this franchise, though, is that if this reset and the new layers of it push off the people that have stayed with it for this long, they're going to lose something in their revenue, in their market share. Like, how many are the players like me? Like, there's lots of people that have fallen away. We've Paul Tassi had Steam concurrent numbers this week, and the Edge of Fate had the lowest of any expansion all the way. If we go back to early Destiny 2. Like, of the last 5 different expansions, this never broke, at least in concurrence. This is before the raid this weekend, but it never broke 100,000 concurrence. You know, I think for me, if there are people out there that enjoy it but got lost along the way, this could be a space where it feels like it could be worth coming back to, but not necessarily. I think the hard part of it and the big asterisk to this all is, when we were into Destiny, we were into Destiny. Like, we played a lot. Like, my fire team and I, we would run strikes on a regular week. You know, we'd get our weeklies in. You know, there was a regular hamster wheel cycle that was going on, where right now it feels like I'm enjoying what I'm playing, but I also don't know that it's going to have enough to keep me there after I finish the story. So that's a long-winded answer to your question, but this is E2KG, so long-winded is what we do. Any other questions on, again, you know, it still is Destiny. So I'll be curious, and you guys hold my feet to the fire. Like, if I bump off this in 2 weeks, like, I think that says something, right? Or if this becomes like, yeah, I checked in on it, played another mission, I'll get through the story before it gets to the December next story release, and which I might actually be okay with, like $30, $20 over the course of 5 months. Not so bad. Speaking of a long-running game that is also live service that has tried to reinvent itself at different points in time, Game Logic, you've been playing The Division 2 on PC.
Yeah, so I just went back to this earlier today. It's kind of interesting because in some ways I see it feels like there's kind of like a destinyification kind of going on with the Division 2. And I have 78 hours in the game plus, and I've never participated in the seasonal content. It's always just been, I've just played the campaign. Like I've played the campaign. I've played the campaign twice. I've done a run through with a friend of mine in co-op, and then I've gone a skosh into the I always call it like the Gangs of New York, whatever like the New York expansion is.
Yeah, the Brooklyn expansion.
No, not the
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn.
Oh no, Brooklyn's the newest one.
Yes,
the Warlords of New York.
Yes. Yeah. So I've gone into that a little bit, but didn't stick with it all the way through because I started that in co-op with a friend of mine. And so like that person and I don't play together that much, not because there was any like schism between us, but just because of time and availability and scheduling. And like I just like wasn't entirely interested in it playing through without that person. So but kind of like you with Destiny, like I just love the mechanics of the Division 2. And so I went back into it today. It does what it's always done. I was playing it on a RTX 3080 Ti on a 1080p very high refresh rate display with a 240 hertz display, and getting anywhere upwards of 160 frames per second, but generally like more so up in like the 200s. And so it's one of the few games, single first person shooters I have that actually goes up to those ridiculous frame rates. But it continues to be like a great game. It's amazing the amount of debris that they show scattered around DC in the snowdrop engine. Like it's amazing to me. But yeah, it's just kind of that same type of geedunk fun. Like I was it was super enjoyable to get back into it. I've always talked about the onboarding in the Division 2 and how, to me, it's really kind of like one of the examples of peak of onboarding design. And I go back into it today and I was like, hold on a second, like there's something, like did they change this? And lo and behold, kind of like Destiny 2, they changed it. I feel like they did a better change to it than Destiny 2 did in kind of wiping away the Red War campaign. But basically, I want to say in the original onboarding in the Division 2, you start off as if you're like an agent in whatever the area was for the first game. And then you get this distress signal that says they need help in DC, right? And so What's that, BBQ?
I don't think so. No, I think in the original Division 2, you start off kind of, it's an assault on the White House. You're making your way up to the.
So that's what it is. That's what it is now. They changed it. There was in the original Division 2, you start off and there's somebody like coaching you, like you're not by yourself. There's a NPC like talking to you, telling you pick up a weapon, come out here, we're being attacked by whatever, and then you go out and it's a defensive
Okay.
mission. And then you get this distress call that they need help in DC. And then so you take off and go to DC, and then you're in that thing that you're talking about now where you're approaching the White House and there's like a distress signal saying, hey, any nearby agents, we need your help. And that's why you're kind of spoken to as if you're an agent from like out of area when that game starts. And so, but they've changed it so that you no longer go through that introductory section. It immediately starts with that you approaching the White House, responding to this distress call. So I thought that was interesting. And then it feels like, and I don't know this for certain, but it feels like it's in the campaign, it feels like it's maybe been restructured to where there's a smaller number of kind of core missions and they're strung together much more sequentially than the first game was. Like you're not necessarily encouraged as much to go off and do side content because it feels like, and they pop a bunch of stuff in your windshield about seasonal content, which I like, well, I don't remember before because there wasn't seasonal content, right? But it seems like it's like they're telling you, hey, basically go do these, I don't know, 6 to 12 like core main campaign missions, and then get into the seasonal content. But anyway, it's tons of fun. You know, you're still going around through those core missions, and you know, going through, you know, getting your additional skill sets and learning, you know, getting the skill set to pop up a turret and to send up a drone, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm having tons of fun with it. It's interesting because every time like, you go back to a game like this, like I always takes me a while to like relearn like my racking and stacking paradigm. However, I decide to like arm these 3 weapons versus anything else. You know, when I get a new piece of gear and decide, well, I'm going to use that instead of this. Amazingly quick in the Division 2. I don't think it's a matter of like I remember it a lot better. I just feel like it's a matter of the design of the game. In its progression system is just very tight and very clean and makes everything like super intuitive. I will say one thing I did learn today that I didn't pay attention to is I never paid attention to the fact that you can sort your gear by anything from like rounds per minute to damage to magazine size, and then you know then it has like 12 different factors that you can use to sort your gear, which I've never used before. I've always just done it manually and by sight. And I realized today is like, oh no, when I'm in my paradigm where I want to arm like the highest damage weapons or the highest RPM weapons or rounds per minute weapons or the highest or the biggest magazine size, then I can readily sort these things so I can, you know, make those choices, you know, a lot faster than I have in the past. So that was a cool thing that I just finally paid attention to today.
I wonder if some of that's been added over the years. Like I know, like looking in the like kind of, you know, I have had it since launch. I've dipped into it occasionally here and there. You know, it does seem like they've continued to add layers into that menu system. So potentially that's one of the things, but I think that that's a nice, especially as they've added more and more guns to that kind of repertoire, the ability to sort the way you're talking about makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, we often give Borderlands the credit for being like the Gunapalooza game. But I think if you play the Division 2, you really look at the Division 2, you find it's like just as much. Of course, this doesn't get all kind of crazy with all of like the appearances of, you know, the guns in Borderlands 2, or in the Borderlands franchise, but essentially it is kind of the same thing. Like it's a little more flattened.
It's a little more grounded in reality versus the Borderlands one, right? You're
you
modifying stocks and sights and magazines.
You can get 2 shotguns, right? And the 2 shotguns have the same kind of cosmetic appearance. But when you go in and look at their stats, the stats are different, right? And so there is a reason to arm one over the other. But then yes, then
Yeah,
you can
that's a
add the
very good
mods
point,
as well.
right?
Yeah.
It's the rolling aspect of it in terms of kind of the RFG, the random chance aspect to what those stats are. Yep. Nice. All right, Tal, let's go from 2 big live service games to one semi-open world that is definitely not a live service, but it's back to you on the Nintendo Switch 2.
Yeah. So,
Before you jump in, Tal, I'm gonna I'll lodge a potential objection and say that I think we do consider this a live service game now with the content drops coming and the open worldness aspect of it and the way we know it's going to shift over time. So I don't know.
I
maybe.
would love to say that this game is an open world game. I would not land on that judgment compared to, Burnout and Forza Horizon. Yeah, I think that I also would love to think of this game as a live service game that is doing events and doing different things. I I bet we get there. I don't know. We're not there yet. But it seems there's certainly the potential for Mario Kart. I guess we're burying the lead here. We're talking about Mario Kart World, and like there's so much that they could do. It'll be interesting to see what they do. But
Yeah, I mean the open world is more like a mode, like it's like free mode. You can't really do it multiplayer when you're kind of gearing up or waiting for multiplayer online. You can kind of like just go around the world as you're waiting, but you don't really see anybody else in there. So, but yeah, I can see them. But see, it's Nintendo though. Same thing was said about Animal Crossing when it came out, the last one. Like, oh, they're probably going to do all this kind of stuff, and they never did. Like, maybe they'll do it this time around. Who knows? But Mario Kart may be a little bit different because obviously it's a huge game, and it's been hugely popular over the years. And hopefully, they'll try to.
Todd's game logic. Tao's just poking at us, just ribbing us to say, hey, wouldn't that be nice if the game you liked actually was like a modern game?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to dive super deep on the semantic tonight, but I will say I will pitch for consideration that there is a spectrum of live service games, and that what we think the far right of that spectrum is absolutely battle pass, seasonal events, LTEs, LTMs, new maps, new content. Like every 4 to 6 weeks, right? There's a thing, but and I will say on the far left of that spectrum, which I don't think of a live service game, but there's this attempt to crowbar and say, Cyberpunk, right, is a live service game, right? And it gets new content drops and stuff. But I would say like kind of in the middle, there's this thing kind of like Forza, right? There are things that get like events and content not as frequently, and it's not always tied to like a battle pass, but it is like in even Animal Crossing, it is a drop that gives you a reason to go back and play the game, and not to shuffle it way into the back annals of your backlog, right? But to keep it like at the surface, and then like when a new stuff comes, it's like, okay, let me go do that kind of thing. Sorry, go ahead, Tom.
No, that's right. I mean, they could incorporate the mobile aspect of Mario Kart that they had, where they did have that kind of stuff, like seasonal stuff, possibly into World at some point. I mean, that would kind of make sense. Like, I think that game's still going. I believe. I think they were having like a Dr. Bonanza season or content drop or whatever they do in that game. I thought I just
Yeah, the
saw.
servers are still live for it. Actually, it just came out with a new track for the first time in a while, or a track that had only been exclusive for a little while is back out. So there was an update for the first time in years.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I can see them, start to hopefully do that in the future. Like I said, we'll see. We'll see what Nintendo was going to do with this one. But yeah, so I think I mentioned I finished all the Grand Prix a couple weeks ago, 50, 100, 150 races. I jumped into World Tour this past week. I finished all the 50cc races, which one of them took me a few tries actually, because right at the end, of course, I got blue shelled or what. Something happened that I lost. I got first the whole way through until the very end, and then hit. So I had to do it a few times, but I was able to finish the 50cc ones. I've done a little bit of the online so far, the multiplayer online. Um, it's interesting when you're doing that. You kind of have, I guess it's like a ranking system where you like earn points or whatever. Because like I see people with like, I think I started like 3,000 or something. Obviously people are higher, 4,000, 5,000. I think I might have saw as high as 5,000 or whatever. But I'm not really sure. I don't know if that's like a level or like what that's going to entail like in the future. If you could do something with that number of sort, which
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it out there. It's like as you win, you add
get
to it. As you
points.
lose, you decrease points. I don't think it doesn't seem to be tied to any type of matchmaking at this point.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, because I've seen various levels when I've gone in there. I'm assuming there'd be a ton of people playing, so could be matchmaking, but I don't think it is. But
Tao, have you been
uh,
playing couch co-op or multiplayer with any family?
no, I haven't done any couch co-op yet. So I don't know if have you done couch co-op?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I've done couch co-op, and you can do the open world. You can do together.
Oh,
You can't play online, I don't think, together, but definitely have done some 2-player, 3-player, and 4-player couch co-op.
nice.
So
Yeah, I didn't know that you can do the open world with free roam, whatever they call it in there.
yes, you kind of have to it's what you do is you create a lobby, and then you both can kind of be in that lobby, which is just the free roam at that point.
Okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, so I mean that's I don't think I've maybe finished in the top 10 a couple times doing the online. I haven't won anything. I haven't won those yet, but I'll keep trying. I know I didn't do a ton of online either, which is kind of surprising.
Are you doing traditional racing, or are you trying the knockout mode?
I've only done, yeah, just the traditional races where you kind of vote for each map each round.
Okay.
So
Yes, as a battle royale fan, you should try the knockout mode because it definitely has, it scratches that itch to some degree.
yeah, because you have to like finish in top whatever, like each race, right? Yeah. So yeah, I'll have to try that too. It's just, well, I mean, they're not, I guess, not too long, like 5 to 6, 7 minutes or something like that. Those races. So yeah, I have to try. But yeah, still enjoying it. I've when I was going through the Grand Prix, I only used Luigi, who's my favorite Mario character. Uh, so I was using him. But now that I've kind of got past that, I was just kind of switching between the characters, which really the characters don't really mean anything as far as I know. Just the carts themselves have different stats on them. So, and I've just been using different ones each time. So kind of like my Call of Duty, where I change guns after every round. I'm doing that same thing in Mario Kart, where I just change characters and change carts, after each race or after each set of races, depending on what I'm doing. But yeah, still plugging away at it.
Nice. All right, Game Logic, back to you. Earlier with Destiny, I was talking about Metroid Prime and the Morph Ball. You've been playing Metroidvania-like, which is a game from last year, 2 years ago at this point, but still such a solid, beautiful game. Great Metroidvania, which is Prince of Persia: The Last Crown.
Lost Crown. Yes.
Lost, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I originally had this game on the Nintendo Switch, and I still do. That's not where I'm playing it now. I'm now playing it on the PlayStation 5 Pro. I recently just upped for like 1 month on PlayStation Plus Premium. And this is a game that's in the game catalog. So I thought it would be neat to kind of take a spin on it with kind of a highly performant rate system. Um, and plays wonderfully. It's super fluid. I've been playing it with various PlayStation controllers, including the DualSense Edge. Um, it's just wonderful. The version that's on PlayStation Plus Premium, it seems like it came with some of the like pre-order content. So like you've got a few different skins here. Like I'm wearing, I don't remember what skin this is, but I'm wearing one of the various outfits that comes with the PlayStation Plus version.
It looked like from the screenshot in PlayStation Plus that it's the one that includes the DLC.
I think it does. I think it does.
Yeah, I'm trying to
Um,
remember what the complete package or whatever it's whatever it's called. But go ahead.
Yeah, I
Continue.
can't remember what it's called, but yeah. Yeah, I've been having fun playing it. Just finished like the first really major boss battle against the Manticore. Um, and unlock the double dash, which just makes like a huge difference in traversal. There's that's like 10%, 15% or so into the game, and like right away you immediately get access to like different areas that you couldn't get to without the air dash. And then also makes a huge difference in combat and some of the maneuvers that you can pull off. So um, yeah, like I said, just having a ton of fun with it. There's not too much to brief on it outside of what we talked about last year. Just going back and playing it again. It and then it's got the parry system in there too. Which is a thing that I've become more enamored with since completing Expedition 33. Typically a thing that I typically couldn't be bothered with in games. But now I've kind of got a thirst for going in and trying and playing games with these parry systems in them and actually using it. This is one of those games that I don't label it as a criticism, but like I draw the difference between this and like an Expedition 33, where there are games like this where it has a parry system, but you can get away with playing the game without using the parry system. It doesn't really force it on you. Whereas something like Expedition 33 like requires you to master the parry system, right? Um so but yeah, I love the traversal. It's incredibly fluid. The combat's incredibly fluid. Everything about the game just kind of it's one of those games that like makes the controller feel good in the hand, so to speak. Um so
I think that's a nice segue to the next game in terms of the controller feeling good in your hands and fluidity. Uh, Tao, you have been playing some more of Rematch.
Yeah, so playing more Rematch this past week. Initially, I was playing mostly on PC. I did jump on the Xbox Series X. So I'm playing through Game Pass. That's where I got it, and I played it a couple days, last couple days actually on the Xbox Series X. And I mean, not a graphic powerhouse or anything, so I mean it runs fine on both systems. It's about the same graphically. So, but I've been playing a lot more ranked matches or the rank mode after I think it's a level 5. You get to open up the ranked mode and start that. So trying to claw my way up. I've started at bronze 3. I've got up to bronze division 1, and then I think I'm back down to 2 now. So playing with random, so you never know what you're going to get when you're playing random. So sometimes it's good, sometimes bad. I mean, unfortunately I had a one game, and it's rank matches only 5-on-5 right now. You can do quick matches, which is 3-on-3, 4-on-4, or 5-on-5. I think I mentioned that last week, but right now ranked is only 5-on-5. I don't know if that changes, but I think it's only been out for like a month or so now, month and a half maybe, since it actually officially released.
Yeah, I think it
Uh,
was late June.
yeah, so I don't know if that'll change at some point where they do some of the other modes. But like I said last week, 4-on-4 and 5-on-5 are kind of the sweet spot for me. 3 is a little rough sometimes. Um, but yeah, I mean, I had the one match where we were doing good. We were doing pretty good. I think we were up by 1, and I don't know. There's the one guy just started shooting into our goal. I was like, come on, dude, come on. This is ranked. Like, can we not? But you get those people sometimes that, for whatever reason, they just want to be jerks. But so I'm just trying to claw away. I'll kind of bounce back between quick matches and the ranked. Um, Usually when I first get on, I do a couple of the quick matches because obviously it doesn't really mean anything other than getting experience. And I don't remember if I mentioned this, but there's a battle pass, season pass for this. So I didn't buy it yet, but there's a free tier you kind of go through. So I'm just kind of seeing if I can get to the end of it. Maybe I'll just buy it, to get all the premium, content and do that. And once again, it's just cosmetics. Actually a lot of customization on your extra characters. So like different hairstyles, beards, and uh, different kind of clothing and stuff like that. So it's actually kind of nice. You also get stuff for like the banners and um, the banner for like your card, like your player card that you can kind of put on there, but also when you're going into matches. And I think if you're the captain for that match, it whatever background you put on, like actual like field you're playing in, it'll use yours. So like I think right now I have like a desert one for home, maybe away, but I have one for like a desert scene, and another one's like a jungle scene. So if I'm captain, it'll pop that out in the back. So that's kind of cool too. So that's you get those kind of things. But yeah, I'm still really enjoying this game. It's really fun. When you get on a good team, man, it just feels so good. Passing back and forth and scoring. And like I said last week, I think it's like easy, easy to pick up and play, but kind of hard to master. There's little nuances, tricks, and stuff that you can do with passing and um, the different kind of shots you can do, like bicycle kicks and all these other. There's one I can't figure out how to do this one, but there's one where you kind of go down on your side and you're basically holding yourself up on one hand or one arm and you're like kicking it in. So that's kind of cool. I haven't been able to figure that one out. Some of the bicycle kick ones I've been able to do fairly consistently. So just practicing and you just got to keep practicing and you'll get good eventually. But I'm gonna keep plugging away at it. It's my new Rocket League basically for right now. So and actually it's kind of funny because I did play a game or two of Rocket League, and man, it seems slow, like which is kind of odd to say because you're using cars in Rocket League. So you have you got a turbo boost, kind of a turbo um, a thing in Rematch too, but it just seems like way slower in Rocket League. And then it seemed like the ball is a lot floatier. And I guess in Rematch, they're trying to do like actual physics of the ball, but it's still kind of cartoony or arcadey at times. But yeah, Rocket League just seems super slow, and just the ball physics, which just seemed like super floaty when it's like flying in the air. And I was just playing like a regular mode. Like sometimes they'll have like LTM's where they change the gravity and stuff like that with the ball, or just even with the cars. But just doing regular modes, and it felt like I was like way off. I couldn't really do anything because I've been playing Rematch so much. But still gonna continue playing both. But yeah, playing a lot of Rematch.
Nice. Yeah, I could see moving from semi real world physics with a soccer ball to the floaty Rocket League ball could definitely change your timing. So nice. Glad to hear you're getting more into the kind of specialization of the moves and the actions there. All right, Game Logic, you are last up on our playlist. So Lost Crown, and Prince of Persia, as you were talking about before, you were looking to see what it looked like on the PlayStation 5 Pro. But now you're back on Xbox as well. So you are in this rotation of trying to get a little bit out of each of your consoles on a regular week. What have you been playing on Xbox?
So on Xbox, I've been playing Wolfenstein: The New Order on the Xbox Series X. Which however, whatever magic right they're doing with the box and kind of the automatically layered on like upgrades or improvements or whatever. I assume frame rate right or whatever is there. The game it's playing like so. I was doing a backlog replay of Halo Infinite last week, and that game looks more modern, but definitely has kind of some frame pacing problems, right? That you could definitely see where like the frame rate's not consistent. This game doesn't look as modern, but I feel like the frame pacing, right, and the overall consistency and frame rate is much better. Which probably is because like the texture maps and stuff aren't as high res. But yeah, I've been having a lot of fun playing Wolfenstein: The New Order. Long history, right, with the Wolfenstein series since the reboot in the early 2000s. And The New Order was kind of a reboot of the reboot. But yeah,
This is 2014 or so.
I want to say maybe sometime in the teens.
Some of their like early series or Xbox One era. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm into it's BJ Blazkowicz has woken up. They've lost the war. So I've played the first couple of hours, and I'm now into is it Eichenwald, I think, prison to try and free the resistance members. So it's been lots of fun. Like this is a game that has, I think every time I've played this game before, I've like deliberately spent a ton of times using like constantly cycling between weapons. And this time around, like I'm just kind of like I don't think I'm going to bother cycling weapons unless like they give you the pistol with the silencer or I run out of ammo. I think I finally realized that like a single assault rifle is a heck of a lot more accurate than doing the Arnold Schwarzenegger with like the dual assault rifles under each arm. But regardless, it's I enjoy the difference in enemy variety. I enjoy the moments of stealth, and then the moments where you're just able to kind of go in and do full on blazing assault. And then your choice and option, right, to play in those two different modalities. So it's been a lot of fun. I'm continuing the romp. It's one of those games that I enjoy going back to. It's not necessarily easy, but it's straightforward, right? It's a first person shooter. There's not a ton of Uncharted Tomb Raider like puzzles, right, to figure out or things like that. So it's just kind of enjoyable being hopped up on adrenaline and proceeding directly through the main campaign.
Nice. All right, gentlemen, that takes us through the content of our show. As we look ahead till next week, we've got a few games like coming out this week. Two of the games that I talked about during the Steam Next Fest, Wildgate from some former StarCraft developers, and then Clutch Time, which was that basketball deck builder game that I talked about back during June's Steam Next Fest, are coming this week. But we also get Wu Chang Fallen Feathers coming out on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation on July 24th. This is a Souls-like. Is that I'm seeing Game Logic nod a little bit here. So
yeah, I'm not as intimately familiar with this game. I know it's shown up at a couple showcases, and
yeah, graphically it looks really kind of it looks really really impressive. Yeah, it's an action RPG, a little bit of a Souls-like in it as well.
Chinese developer, so it's kind of following in the footsteps of Black Myth Wukong.
Yes.
And it's similarity to that visual style is kind of what popped it on people's radars when it was shown during like I said, showcase or developer direct or wherever it showed up, state of play. So should be interesting.
And then our other notable release coming out this week is for Switch 2, which is Wild Hearts S. So Wild Hearts came out couple years ago now at this point. It was a Koei Tecmo game, and the Switch 2 version of it is coming out. Again, it feels a little bit, if I'm looking at if what I remember from it, get a little bit of a Monster Hunter aspect with some large beasts, and Tao, you're nodding along as well. So, and then the S version adds in any of their DLC that came out with it as well?
I'm actually going to check. I can't believe so. It does, yeah. Yeah, it's pretty much just Monster Hunter-ish.
Yeah, it's the complete version. Yeah, yep. So a little bit of Souls, a little bit of Monster Hunter coming out next week. Gentlemen, anything else on your radar for the coming week before we round off our show?
No,
right.
One thing just to go back to Rematch real quick. I forgot to mention that I'm playing on just controller now. Initially, I was playing on PC.
Hold on. We're not in. Our time period is up. You can't just come back and try to score another goal.
I just want to throw that in real quick. Bicycle kick that one in. So made a decision because it's a little bit easier doing a lot of the defensive stuff, at least for me, doing the controller. So
with controller versus keyboard and mouse.
Yeah.
Yep, that makes sense. It's played in third person. Yeah. Thanks to way to come back with a final overtime or extended period goal. So, all right. And Nate, thanks for joining us in the chat. Appreciate your comments and also the reality of the limitations as publishers kind of control and change licenses, as well as your comments that Game Logic grabbed earlier that we didn't get a chance to highlight. So thanks for that. Everybody else who stopped by, really appreciate you. Glad you're here. Always glad to have you join us. We are here every week on Sunday evenings 8 o'clock Eastern time. Come in, join us, drop a line in the chat, tell us that we're wrong. Obviously, as you saw tonight, we are glad to throw some barbs back and forth at each other, but also we are also very appreciative of each other and our different perspectives, and appreciative of your perspectives as well. So thanks for joining us. If you are watching us online or listening to the audio only version on your podcatcher of choice, thanks for joining us. Thanks for spending time with us, and glad to have you. So whether you come back on a regular or you're stumbling into us, we are thankful for your time together. All right, for myself, DBQ Hams, Game Logic on the boards, and Towmaster running his final goal, this has been episode 396. We are almost there, gentlemen. 396 for the week of July 20th. So until next week, play the games you love those you play with, and be kind to yourself. Good night, everybody.